Today's video crew is on video Soren Lighthouse, on still camera Logan McKay, on audio Leander Holzapfel and Sarah Spurt. And I am Zanaba McNace. I'd like to ask a few questions about your background.
Okay.
Have you always lived in Marlboro?
Okay, excuse me, Zanaba, let's back up. You
No.
also, pardon me, Rachel,
Okay.
you also want to say, today we're in the classroom of junior high teacher Rachel Boyden. Or something, whatever you have written down.
Today we're at the Marlboro School in Rachel Boyden's classroom. And
Then you begin.
yeah. I'd like to ask you a few questions about your background.
Okay.
Have you always lived in Marlboro?
No.
Do you live in the same house you grew up in or a different one?
I live in a different one that's across the road from the one that I grew up in. So it's very near the one I grew up in.
When did you build the house?
I built the house 22 years ago, so that would be in 1990-something, 94.
How would you each describe yourself as a child?
As a young child, I was a sweet young thing. I was the youngest of three. I was wonderful and charming. But as I got to be a young adult, I was kind of a pain in the neck and broke a lot of rules, and it was kind of hard for my parents and my teachers to deal with.
May I ask you how old you are?
You may.
How old are you?
I'm 60.
How many brothers or sisters do you have, and what are their names?
I have two sisters. They're both older than me. The oldest one is named Jennifer, and the next one is named Rebecca.
What are your parents' names, and what are their careers?
My father's name was Roland William Boyden, and he taught at Marlboro College. And my mother's name was Cynthia Boyden, and she was a wife and homemaker, worked as a secretary at Marlboro College, and a librarian at the Marlboro School.
Would you tell me your husband's and child's names?
My husband's name is Peter Van Loan, and my son's name is Roland William Boyden, named after his grandfather, and my daughter's name is Amy Van Loan.
How many years did it take to become a teacher?
Well, I'm finding that hard to answer because I've been a lot of different kinds of teachers. So I went to graduate school right out of college and got a master's degree, and that took about 4 years, and then I taught at the college level for a while. And then I went back and got certified, and that took about 2 more years to teach in public schools.
What made you want to become a teacher?
I think it was a way to continue being a scholar first. But then, when I went back to teaching after I'd worked in a library for a while, and I had small children, the idea of summers off was really appealing. And then when I chose this job, it was because I really love students this age. So there were 3 different things.
In what year did you begin teaching at Marlboro School?
2003 or 4 or 2 or something like that. I don't remember. About 10 or 11 years ago.
Had you applied for a teaching job anywhere else?
Not that year, but I had been teaching at other places before that.
Do you have a favorite grade to teach?
Yes, 7th and 8th.
What is that you like about teaching those grades?
They're so quiet. Oh, wait a minute, no. I like teaching those grades because I can still have the scholarly, intellectual conversations with those students that I had when I taught college, but I can also have fun and wacky times because those students are still young and they're still kids. So I can have the best of both worlds of academics and fun.
Have you ever taught classes in subjects other than the ones you just mentioned?
Yeah, I think so. I didn't really actually mention any subjects. So, I have mostly taught classes in what's known as the humanities, which is English and social studies, even when I taught college. But one of my college teaching jobs, I did a lot of independent studies, and I actually taught some fine art classes and some science classes. I've never taught any math classes.
What are some of the drawbacks, if any?
Of this job here? There are very few, actually. I'd like it if I didn't have to go back to work in August. I'd rather go back to work in September. That's kind of picky, but you know. Dealing with people who think they know more about education than I do, dealing with governmental issues and laws, trying to tell me how to teach. Those are the drawbacks.
Could you imagine yourself moving permanently from teaching junior high to teaching at some other level?
I don't think so, because I've already kind of done that. So I've taught older, right on up to people my own age, and I can't really imagine teaching younger students. I think that would be way too hard. I do. But just recess duties enough for me to deal with the tears and the issues that come up with younger students.
Do you have a favorite research topic, and can you explain a little bit about it?
My favorite research topic right now is one that I'm actually working on with some old colleagues from Marlboro College, and it's to do with the class I'm teaching right now, which is about classic fantasy literature and reading all the classic fantasy, starting with things like Grimm's fairy tales and the Arabian Nights. That's my favorite one right now. I might have a different favorite one next year. But, so.
Have you ever had work published in magazines or journals?
No.
What authors do you like to read for pleasure?
Jane Austen. C.S. Lewis, Henry James, Toni Morrison. Those are the ones just right off the top of my head.
Who would you say has influenced you in your teaching style, and in what ways have they influenced you?
I would say that my father is maybe one of the biggest influences. He's the master of the dramatic pause and waiting for the students to answer. He could wait a really long time in a quiet and he also had great faith in what the students were thinking. As was the case of a woman I studied with at Marlboro College, Audrey Gorton, who taught me to talk about literature as if I was talking about my dear friends, and I just love those people and trying to get to know them. Those are probably the two biggest influences on my teaching. Sorry, Dick. No, sorry. Just realized I didn't mention the person I studied with at Marlboro College. But anyway.
What do you say is the most difficult part of your job?
Not being really tired at the end of the day. I don't know, that's most difficult. You know, it's remembering not to assign a whole bunch of papers at the same time, because then I have to correct them all. So you think I would have learned to not do that so I don't have a whole stack? So maybe it's an organizational in terms of organizing what work I assign so that I can keep up with the work. It's probably the most difficult. Figuring out my curriculum so I don't give myself too much work to do.
Are there any difficult parts about living in the same town in which you teach?
No, I love it, actually. I think it's great. I think it's great that I know the parents of the kids that I teach, that I have a pretty short commute, that I can go back and forth, that I see people in the summer. I like that I'm that close to the families that I teach.
What do you feel are the more important parts of your job?
I think the more and most important parts of my job are just making sure that you guys, you students, enjoy learning. I don't really care about the content all that much. I care that you enjoy whatever it is you happen to be doing, whether you're reading a book or you're doing a little project, that you're having a good time doing it, because then you'll be lifelong learners. So it doesn't really matter that much to me what the book is that you're reading or what the project is if you get involved in it.
What are some of the parts of your job you particularly like?
I love going on field research trips with my students, because I see a different side and I see a different kind of learning that I don't see in the classroom, so that's one thing I really love. I love my literary discussion groups on Friday afternoons. We sit around, read books, and drink tea and eat cookies. Those are the things that come up first, most, I guess, yeah.
there parts of your job you dislike?
Yes. Do you want to know what they are?
Sure.
I hate filling out report cards. I'm not particularly fond of it's much easier for me often to deal with my students than it is to deal with their parents. It's hard sometimes to, so that's a hard, it's a communication skill that I have to work on. Not all parents, just sometimes. That's hard. And it's not necessarily fun, the way teaching you guys is fun. So those are two things that are hard. Going to meetings, going to meetings is, everybody has to do it. I don't particularly like going to meetings, whether it's just a staff meeting or a big meeting at Wyndham Central. I don't like that. Cleaning up your dirty dishes, I don't particularly like that.
What are some of the ways the job has changed over time?
That's a hard one. I don't feel like it's changed a great deal for me in the past 10 years. The biggest change may be having to do with social media and monitoring cell phone use, which was not something we ever had to do. We had a phone that they brought to school. So that's that I've had to become police that activity in some ways is a new thing. How students do research is hugely different, because when I first started teaching, almost all the information my students got was from books and articles that I would copy, and now the great majority of it is on the internet. So that's different too, and that's an adjustment in terms of where and how we get our information is different. And then actually how the students produce it. So, I don't always get my papers on paper anymore. I get them electronically. And I have to learn how to correct papers in a new way for me, which is it's much more labor intensive for me to correct a paper on a Google document than it is like this, because I just can write much faster by hand than I can, find a way to do that. So that's changed quite a lot too.
How would you describe the educational posture of MES?
The educational posture? I don't really understand that question, I guess. I guess I don't know. That it's child-centered, I guess, maybe, I'm not sure what that means. I'm not really sure how to answer it.
Okay. Would you tell us something about who Bruce Cole is and the role played in the establishment of MES's philosophy of education?
Mr. Cole was my junior high teacher. He put up with kind of a lot from me, actually. He was the first teacher that I had who put the students first, as opposed to some curriculum that he believed was supposed to be taught. And I would say that was the huge difference that he made in the school, is that he really thought about each student that he dealt with, and he got to know them, and tried to figure out what was best for them educationally and emotionally, and he did. He turned the place into a school where people had fun while they were learning, where we learned that mistakes were okay, that there was sometimes no right answer, and that was okay. There were a bunch of different answers. So, yeah, he changed the school a great deal. Who's also the first, I believe, the first teacher who piled kids on a bus and took them on a big research trip. Never happened before he came, I don't think. We went to a Red Sox game.
Lucky.
And the Science Museum in Boston. So.
What are some of your interests outside of teaching?
I like to write. I like to cross-country ski and swim and garden. To spend time with my family, which includes my husband and kids, but also my sisters that I see quite a lot still. I like to cook, play cribbage. I'm sure there's other things that I can't think of, but play with my animals. I have a cat and a dog.
Is there anything else about your life in Marlboro or your job that you like to mention but that I haven't asked you about?
I feel really fortunate to work at the Marlboro School because I know there are other schools where teachers are not given the freedom to teach what they want, which our principal Francie does. I've never been told, no, you can't teach that, or no. I mean, I've been told, perhaps it's time you address this issue, but I've never been handed a curriculum that I have to do, and I've been given incredible freedom to teach what's important to me. And I think that's an amazing thing for a public school teacher to be able to do that. So that's pretty cool. I also like that I'm teaching the kids and the grandchildren of people that I know. I think that's fun too.
Thank you very much for your time.
You are very welcome.